Hello, it's Heidi Fisher here with the Social Enterprise Online Festival, and today I'm joined by Nicky Kent, who's going to be talking to us about starting up a social enterprise. Hi Nicky, could you just tell us a little bit about your background and experience, please?
Yeah, will do. Thanks, Heidi. My name's Nicky Kent, as you've just said, and I'm a social enterprise business consultant. I work in various different guises in terms of that I've got my own consultancy business, which people can come to me privately. I've been working in this sector, under the training and development sector for over 30 years. So people can come to me through Social Heart CIC, which is a community interest company. I also do some work with a company called Partners for Social Enterprise, which is a networking organisation which allows social entrepreneurs or people that are thinking of setting up a social enterprise, they can come along to network meetings and get support from us there. And we work quite closely with newbies, as we call them. I also do some work with, I've got a social enterprise called Feather Perfect Falconry, which is, we use birds of prey to connect people to nature. So that's my working live social enterprise, if you like, so that I actually can walk the talk. I've also doing some work at the moment for an organisation called FuseKick, which actually supports anybody that's unemployed and or economically inactive to start a social enterprise or a business, or even set up as self-employed to start with, to see if social enterprise is for them. So there is lots going on in my world in terms of delivering support to people, and there's lots that people can get in Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin. It's a great place to start up a social enterprise. There's so much support here.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds like you've got a lot of experience around starting up a social enterprise. What are some of the main issues that people come to you with when they're thinking about starting up a social enterprise?
Yeah, well, normally people come along with just a sort of seed idea, something small that they've thought about. It's been sort of niggling in the background. There's something they've always wanted to do, but they haven't really known where to start. So a lot of what I do with startups is around clarifying their vision and making sure that they fully understand, one, what a social enterprise means and what the legal structures are all about, because that confuses a lot of people. They go online, they see lots of information, but it doesn't necessarily make sense, or they can't sort of relate it to what they are actually trying to achieve. So we look at vision in a big way in terms of what it is they want to do, how they're going to make the money, whether it will ever make money, and really look at what the problem is that they're trying to solve. Because at the end of the day, most businesses, as you're probably aware, are solving people's problems, and it's how well that service or product that they're trying to deliver resolves people's problems to the point where they want to buy it. Because at the end of the day, you can't run a social enterprise unless you can make some money.
Yeah, talking of making money, is it a case that a lot of people still come with the idea that they just want to do something good and they haven't really thought about the making money side?
Well, I'm going to give you one of my 3 tips now, because one of my tips is enterprise first, social second. It's a mantra I read out quite often to people, because when you set up a social enterprise, usually there is a social purpose that's driving people forward to set up a social enterprise in the first place. And there isn't really a concept about how they're going to make money in order to live for themselves. And a lot of people that set up social enterprises don't necessarily have a lot of startup funding, or have even thought about how it's actually going to make them a wage every week. So they're very keen to support the cause that they've identified, and they've identified a need, but unfortunately there's a lot of things that are needed in society, but not necessarily the money to pay for them, which is why sometimes councils pull funding, the grants are missing, because the government haven't got as much money as they used to provide grant funding. So social need is growing, but the funding is often getting smaller. So it is very important that people do think about how they're going to generate the money in the first place. So that's why my mantra is enterprise first, social second, because if you're going to commit your time to building up a social enterprise that supports vulnerable people or the environment, it's even more important that business doesn't go belly up within the first year or within 3 years or even after, because those people rely on the services that you deliver. So there's quite a bit more weight, I think, on people's shoulders when they set up a social enterprise, because of the fact that people rely on those services so much once they're there and they're in place.
Mm. Do you think people have to be more innovative now when they're thinking up their social enterprise idea because there's more social enterprises out there? Or can people still deliver things that are already out there and just replicate them?
Well, I think you can always replicate a business that's out there. There's always enough room. If there's a need, and nobody really delivers. I mean, I deliver social enterprise support as a business consultant, and I bet you I don't deliver my support in any shape or form in the same way as anybody else that does that, delivers that service. So I think if you are authentic and individual, and that comes on to another one of my three things that I was going to talk about, is that I think if you are yourself and you are passionate about what you do and it becomes your purpose, you will deliver that in an individual and authentic way, to the point where your services won't replicate anything that's out there. You'll have to have a unique selling point of your own, just because you are you, and the way you operate and the history and the knowledge that comes with you sort of almost makes your business individual, regardless of whether it's the same service as somebody else is delivering or not. So I think the answer to that is, yeah, you need to be aware if there's competitors out there that are going to obviously make it harder for you to deliver what you're delivering, and it is a consideration. But I wouldn't rule it out altogether, as long as what you're delivering has a unique selling point and you've done your market research and you know that it's going to hit the points that, the problems that people really have in a unique way. Then I don't think it's a real problem that there are other services that are similar out there. I mean, at the end of the day, you and I both work in the same space, but we operate in a completely different way.
Very true. So you're saying there your approach to how you support startup social enterprises is very unique. Could you tell us a little bit about what makes that unique and what your approach is?
Well, I think my service is unique is because I've had things happen in my life that I've applied to the way I work. So I come at business support in a very holistic way. I've struggled in the past. I didn't fit into society myself. I'll tell you a little bit. I don't normally tell people this, but I'll just put it in context. I wasn't able to have children, and all of a sudden I was in mainstream society, going along my life in the prescribed way. You go to school, you pass you pass or you don't pass your 11 plus, and you then do your driving test, and you're expected to get married and possibly have children and all the rest of it. That didn't happen for me. I got married, okay, that was fine, but I wasn't able to have children. And then it was then that I realized how isolated I was as an individual. So what I've done is I've used all my experience and business knowledge and the things that I've done through various different jobs that I've had, and also my unique personal experience of feeling vulnerable and possibly at times my marriage suffered as a result of that, and I ended up nearly homeless and without a husband and isolated in an area that I didn't know, without children. And all of a sudden I realised how difficult it was for somebody in society when things start to go wrong. And I've used all of those issues that I've had and I've put them into my business support. So when I'm supporting people that are trying to set up a social enterprise, I've often either experienced it personally, or because of the experience I've now got within social enterprise, I know somebody who's done something similar, or I can connect people with other people to make sure that they are getting the support they need to set up the social enterprise, and they're going to do it in the right way. Because I say, I just do it from a holistic viewpoint now, and it quite often is about building people, self-esteem, getting them through rough patches, because quite often these social enterprises are born because, say, they've got an issue at home. I mean, I've got one social entrepreneur who set up a business to support respite care, but that's because she had a son that was very disabled and very needy, and she couldn't get the support she wanted, so she then set up a social enterprise. So it often is born from hard times at home or something you've gone through, and I think I've come into social enterprise really because of my personal experiences in life, and that's where my passion comes from. So I try and impart that in my work, and that's my unique selling point. So nobody can replicate that because nobody's got my history, nobody's got my passion, nobody's got my personal experience that I push in to my work. So that's what makes me different from everybody else. And I just come at it from my heart and myself. I don't try to be anything that I'm not. If I don't know the answers to people's questions, or if I think it's outside of my scope, I say so. You know, even there's an end to my knowledge, like there is with everything else. I think as long as you're working within your scope, you're absolutely fine.
Okay, brilliant. That sounds like a very unique and very nice approach in terms of the way you're supporting the person as well as their social enterprise idea. Okay, this next question I have for you. A lot of people get to the point where someone says, oh, you need to do a business plan. What are your thoughts? Should people have business plans, or should they go for something much shorter, like the business model canvas, you know, the one-page sheet where you just do everything on that? Or like me, have it all up in your head?
Well, I think personally there's a place for both, because if you're going for funding, if it's quite an ambitious project where you're going to be looking for some serious funding, then you're going to need a business plan, a written business plan, because if you're going to be if people are going to lend you money, or if you're going to, for instance, go for some big lottery funding where they're going to invest quite a lot of money, then they're going to want some type of written plan. So you won't get away with not having a written plan if you're operating on that level. But if you're talking about people who are setting up a small enterprise in the early days, I'm a great believer that I don't necessarily get them to fill in a formal business plan as such. I give them a formal business plan template to have a look at, which gives them some questions that they need to answer in their head, but I don't necessarily make them write it all down in the format of a business plan. But we do spend a lot of time looking at what they want to do in terms of the vision. So I'm much more about equating it like to a jigsaw puzzle. So if you were going to be making a jigsaw puzzle which didn't have a picture, it would be really, really hard to know where to put the pieces. And I think developing a business is a bit like that. You're trying to create your own picture of your jigsaw puzzle bits, and then get all the bits in the right order in order to get the business to develop and grow. So clarity of vision and blue sky thinking at the beginning, yeah, absolutely, but then you have to get realistic in terms of what you can deliver. So I'm not 6 of one, half a dozen the other. If the person is orientated around a business plan and wants one, then we'll develop one. But I say one sheet of paper can quite often be enough, but it is about knowing in which order to do things. So it's much more like an action plan, I guess, in a way, rather than a business plan as such, because unless you go for funding, you don't need anything that formal. Does that answer your question, or does that just go around the house and say
no, it's fine. It's just good to get other perspectives around business plans, because you hear all different kinds of views around whether they're useful or not. So it's good. I
mean, some of the projects that I work on that are funded, sometimes they stipulate you have to have a business plan, but where they do that, I tend to get away with the bare minimum, because you can spend a lot of time writing it all down in that formal format and trying to get all the wording right. And I think it works in a way in terms of getting your thoughts clear about what you want to say about your business. And quite often, if you write a business plan, you adopt those phrases that you developed in your business plan. You find yourself saying them. It's a bit like if you develop a tagline, all of a sudden you're using that tagline all the time, or an elevator pitch. You find yourself saying it all the time because you've written it. You too tend to remember it. But other than that, I wouldn't say that you've got to have a business plan ever. Okay. It's much more about clarity of vision for me.
And then you also mentioned there about obviously needing a business plan if you're going for funding. Where do you see funding fitting in the income kind of streams, or the mix of income for an organisation? Is it something that you'd recommend organisations look for when they're starting up, or would you say actually you don't need to focus on the trading income straight away, or a mix of both?
Well, all my organisation, I mean, I've started almost with a zero budget in all the social enterprises I've ever started up. And I mean, it isn't easy if you've got no money to start with to invest in the things that you need. So startup funding has been crucial for me, but as you know, it's getting harder and harder to find. Unless you have got a formal social enterprise structure, like you're a community interest company with possibly 2 or 3 directors, you're not going to really attract huge amounts of grant funding. And a lot of people aren't ready to, at the beginning, to take on other directors or to be getting it that formal. So for me, startup funding is great if you can find the odd £1,000 here or £5,000 there. I think startup funding is fantastic, and it's a shame that there isn't more. But in terms of grant funding, I work with a lot of charities as well, and I've been trying to get people to see grant funding as almost icing on the cake, because the trading activity is where you can make the serious money, and at the end of the day, it is money that's going to talk, because it's money that's going to help your beneficiaries at the end of the day and pay you a salary. So for me, I think there's a place for it all. I think if you do a bit of all of it, then the chances are you're going to come in on some of it, but you can spend a lot of time applying for grants. And if you applied that amount of effort into finding some trading activity, for instance, when I set up Feather Perfect Falconry, we didn't have a lot of startup funding. So what I looked for was a contract with an organisation. So we were lucky enough at that time to get a contract with Jessup's, the photography people, to do photography sessions. So that was like a Peter Jones company. So that was quite prestigious, linking with a big company. Now that took me less time to set that up than it did to write an application, and that made me regular money every month as they came and did bird of prey experiences with our organisation. So for me, I try and get people to look at options for trading, because you're in control of that. You can build relationships with people. It's ongoing business, which is it's easier to build. And grant funding is like a one-off thing. You often have to jump through a lot of hoops. But I mean, I wouldn't say rule it out. I just say look at all the options and be careful that you don't spend too much time looking for grant funding, when in fact there are opportunities out there to trade that are easier to get.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'd agree with that perspective. I've always seen grant funding as something that just goes on the top as a nice to have, or something to use to innovate and those kind of things.
Yeah,
okay.
or to expand what you've already got, because the trouble is, if you're not careful, you'll be delivering things. That's where mission drift often comes in, because you start getting grant funding and then you get known for something that you didn't really, it sort of fits the criteria that you set off with, but not quite. And then before you look around, you're delivering things that you never intended to deliver. And then because you're known for that, then people think, okay, well, there's another grant, and that's what they're known for. But actually, that wasn't what your plan was originally. So you have to be really careful, I think, to find that balance.
Yeah, and the other thing that you mentioned in there was around getting additional directors or board members for your social enterprise. A lot of people go into panic around this.
Rightly so, sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, so they immediately think it's going to mean they lose control of their organisation. They won't be involved in the decision making fully. What are your views around that?
Well, I mean, of course, you can have non-executive directors and like hands-on directors. I think the relationship has to be right. I've had a social enterprise where the directorship has been problematic. I won't beat around the bush. It has been problematic, and at the end of the day, in some cases, it has cost us a lot of money in terms of having to try and resolve that either by getting rid of somebody that is not playing the game, or trying to find somebody to replace that person that fits into the mix, because obviously group dynamics come into it. So there are some really important decisions, and a community interest company doesn't work in the same way as a normal company. So it's really important that they buy into the ethics of having an asset lock and understanding fully what their responsibilities are, because you've got moral responsibility. I mean, yeah, there's a list of things that every director's got to have as far as Companies House is concerned, but I think when you're running a social enterprise, it's more than that. You know, there's a moral obligation to the people that you're trying to serve. And so for me, it's about the recruitment process needs to be thorough. I think it is important that you find the right people, because if the group dynamics don't work, you're spending more time worrying around the directorship than you are about putting that energy into developing the business. So I've had some organisations that I've worked with as well that have had some problems with their directors. So it is important you find the right people. So to start with, I think the controls thing is, it needs to be thought through. There is no right or right answer here, because I can't say whether somebody is going to be the right director for you, but it's important that you get directors' agreements in place, like formal agreements, so that everybody understands what they sign up for, what you're going to do if things go wrong, and make sure that people understand that they've got a responsibility as well as a moral responsibility towards the beneficiaries, that you're making money as a community interest company and reinvesting the surpluses. So it isn't really about what you're going to get out of it, although in some cases it is, because obviously you've got to earn a salary, or you might want to need to earn a salary. But what am I saying here really? I'm just saying really that the directorship relationship is important, and when it works and it works well, it's fantastic. So make sure that you do that homework. I wouldn't be rushing into getting directors just to apply for a grant. I'd rather not go for the grant personally, and that's what I advise my clients is, you know, if you're only going to get another director because you want a grant, then are you making that right decision? Because you're going to rush through that process, you might not have the right people. So you're going to have a proper recruitment place. And a lot of social enterprises that I've worked with have also set up, rather than having them as directors, we've set up working groups underneath. So we've got like a friends of group that aren't directors, that they work in the best interests of the social enterprise, but they don't necessarily come on as a director. So it keeps the directors and the overall control to a minimum of possibly 2 or 3 people maximum. Okay. Because you don't want to be just a sole director, because obviously if anything goes wrong, if you become ill or die or anything, then that social enterprise can't go forward. So it's important that you've got more than one, even if it's the family member that is coming on with you in the first instance, so that you don't have to close the business down because it's just one director if anything goes wrong with you.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. Okay. I had another question for you and it's disappeared. Let me just think of it. This is the bit that gets edited out now, because I'm like, what was that question I was going to ask you? My brain has turned to jelly. Oh yeah, I've got it. And another thing that sends people into a bit of a panic is actually having a formal legal structure for their social enterprise. They tend to be quite happy to work through the action plan and get the support. And then when you say to them, right, here are the forms to formally set up, they tend to go into a blind panic about that. And it's like something happens, is what I find. Do you have the same kind of experience that when it becomes that it's almost reality, there's something like hits them and they're like, oh, am I really doing this?
I think it's possibly a legal structure is something that makes it tangible for some people. It suddenly makes them realise that, oh, I've got a business, and so they're really keen to get a legal structure in place. But I see the legal structure as being really the last thing that you really need to. You need to make sure that you've gone through everything else before you decide that the legal structure is right for you. So what we do is we go through it at the beginning and tell them what all the different legal structures are, and then until I've got the vision and I'm absolutely sure that what it is they want to achieve and why, including how many directors they want on board, all those things we've discussed prior to this, I think it's the last thing you try and put it off to the last minute, because your business needs to fit your legal structure, not the legal structure needs to fit your business, not the other way around. So it's a bit like having a Cinderella shoe that doesn't fit. It's nothing worse than trying to deciding that you think you got the right legal structure, and then a few months later realizing that you didn't think everything through, and then all of a sudden, this is now tying you up in knots. So I try and put it off as long as we can to make sure that it is. But if there's a real reason why they need to have a legal structure and we've got to get on with it, I usually find, to be honest with you, Heidi, that most people are really keen to get it sorted and get my help to get the objectives written, because that's what makes it, like I say, it makes it tangible for them and real. So it's like there's two types of people really, aren't there? There's ones that think, oh no, it's a legal structure, right? That sort of makes it all formal, and there's others that want it because until they've got that, they don't feel like they're doing anything properly. Okay. So, but I do think it's something you do need to think about really thoroughly before you commit to that, because there are ways of setting up your business. You can become a sole trader, or you can set up self-employed and whatever. So or you can set up as a limited company and just put some social objectives in without tying yourself into an asset lock and all the other things that a CIC brings with you in terms of formal structure. So if you're not going for grant funding, of course you've got much more choice. If you're going for grant funding, funders tend to want to see an asset lock within the legal structure, so then that reduces your choices down. You tend to be going charity or a CIC if that's what they're wanting.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Nicky, that's been really interesting talking to you. I know you've mentioned your tips a couple of times, but it'd be really useful.
I've got a third one that I haven't mentioned.
Yeah. So it'd be really good if you could just recap the ones that you've already mentioned and give us your top 3 tips around starting up a social enterprise.
Okay. Well, my first one would be to be yourself. To be passionate about what you do, and just get doing. Don't try and be a perfectionist in everything you do, because as much as you're going to be yourself, you're going to be authentic, you're going to put your individualism into your business. Just get on and start doing it, and don't worry about getting everything perfect before starting, because nothing can ever be really perfect. There'll always be things that you can improve on, so you really have to be doing the best you can with what you've got at any one given time. So that'd be my first tip. Second one was enterprise first, social second. We all social entrepreneurs want to reinvest and do good for their beneficiaries, but you really are doing them a disservice if you haven't got a sustainable business. So you really need to make sure that, one, you are sustainable in as much as you're earning the money that you need to survive every month, and that your family gets what they need. So you're probably your first beneficiary. And 2, making sure that the business is stable before you start putting too much back in and too much time in serving the end person. So there's a bit of a setup period, if you like, you need to go through before you start really seeing the benefit for your beneficiaries. And the third one would be celebrate the things that you do well. I don't think we often celebrate the things that we do well enough. And I think we also have to celebrate the things that go wrong, whether they go a little bit wrong or really badly wrong. We need to celebrate those, because we can learn so much from the things that go wrong. And there isn't one business person out there that can honestly say that they've done everything absolutely perfectly and things have never gone wrong. So, put your hands up, say, that didn't work, okay, on to the next, and find something that will work, and just keep battling away until you find something that works and gets you where you want to go. So that's it, really. That's the 3.
So Nicky, you've asked me to come and deliver a workshop at the Social Enterprise Place event that you've got. Could you tell us just a little bit more about that, so that people that might be interested will be able to attend?
Oh, right, yeah. Social Enterprise Place is an award that Social Enterprise UK offer to certain counties or collective areas put together. So sometimes it's a borough, sometimes it's a county, sometimes it could be a collective of people to come together. And we've been lucky enough, we've put in an application to Social Enterprise UK for Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin to become a social enterprise place, and we've just found out that we've been awarded social enterprise place. And as a result of that, there's going to be an event held at the University Centre, Shrewsbury, on the 15th of November this year. And that is open to anybody that wants to come along and learn more about social enterprise. We're lucky enough to have Peter Holbrook as our keynote speaker. He's going to be coming along to tell us what's going on in social enterprise in the wider world. And we've also got a number of social enterprises that are going to tell us about their history and how they've had the good things and the bad things that have happened to them along the way. So it's always interesting to find out about more. Of course, we've got you in the afternoon that is going to, well, you can tell people the title. What are you talking about, Heidi?
I'm talking about social value, social impact, and how to measure and capture your data and actually report on your social impact properly. So
that's right.
That's not the title. That's not the title of it, because you've caught me off guard there, and I'm like, what is the title? But that's the topic.
I think it was something like measuring and oh, I don't know now. You've got me now.
I don't know.
This is it's all about social impact. It's definitely going to be a great session, because I know that's been valued by many people that you've taught that to. So we're really lucky to have you at the event in the afternoon. So that's going to be a lovely workshop. So if you want to get in contact with me, I think my contact details will be given out at the end of this this session. So if you want to get in contact and find out more about that, it'll be about £10 entry fee. So it's going to be great value for what you're going to get, and even get a lunch and some networking and exhibitors and all sorts of stuff. So there's going to be lots there. So we're very lucky, because it means that we now got some social enterprise objectives that we're going to meet as a result of putting in our application there. There's going to be a lot more going on in Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin in terms of social enterprise and events and stuff. So that's going to be really exciting.
Okay, well, that's brilliant. All right, so thanks for sharing the information about that. So as what I'll do is I'll add a link underneath the interviews if people are interested in going to that event, so they can book to go on that as well. Right,
that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nikki. If anyone wants to get in touch with Nikki, her contact details will be underneath the video interview, so you'll be able to get in touch with her or ask any questions that you've got around starting up a social enterprise. Obviously, Nikki's got a very unique and nice approach to how she supports people with that, so it's worth getting in touch with her to find out how she might be able to help you. It's been really good talking to you today anyway, Nikki, so thank you very much for joining me and for doing this interview.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Okay then, take care. Bye.
Thank you, Heidi. Bye-bye.